Welcome into the pod is the roof, the official UNC basketball podcast of the Field of 68. First time we've done this in a while. And by saying we, I really mean me. You will notice if you're watching my co-host Jacob Karabatsis is not joining us for this show. Instead, in his place, I have Isaac Schade from Locked On Tar Heels on the Locked On Podcast Network. Great friend of mine, but yeah, Isaac, this is the first time back on this feed really since the season ended, but excited to have another season of Carolina basketball to cover. I'm a little bit I'm a little bit nervous. I've already run the gamut of emotions with how I feel about this team throughout the exhibitions up until the first game of the season. But even before we get into that, how are you doing, man? I appreciate you being on the pod as a roof.
I'm doing great. And honestly, Riley, I think I could scroll back through our text thread and read that gamut of emotions from
Mhm.
from our text thread back. Dude, but you're living the mountains and the valleys. My goal is to just bring you to sea level today, and that's what we're going to try to do.
What's funny, Isaac, is I think when I've been on Locked On before, I've seen people in the comments say that we're both like glass half full kind of guys when it comes to UNC fandom. And I think we both know how to put it on for to like put the happy face on for the camera. Um but offline, I think I let the emotions fly a little bit more and express how I really
I
feel.
think
But
that's fair to say.
I got to keep
Yeah.
it a little bit more buttoned up on the podcast. I can't be sounding like too much of a delusional fan, but I definitely have my moments there. But
That's right. We look, I think that's what people appreciate and why they come back is because I think we try to be positive and bring that, but I think we don't ever hesitate from being realistic. We're not going to be turds about players, but I think
Mhm.
we try to paint a realistic picture of what folks should expect, and that's what we'll do as we look back at Elon and look ahead to tonight at Fog Island Fieldhouse.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm glad you mentioned Elon. I want to touch on that game first. I know you did a live reaction after that game ended on your channel, but why don't you tell our listeners what were like your biggest takeaways from that game? You can start positive and negative. You can go negative to positive. The ball's in the court, your court. I'm clearing out, letting you rock a little bit.
You know what? I appreciate you clearing some space so I can get to the rack. Riley here. It's funny because my initial reaction on that live reaction you mentioned was negative more because of the just the way things went down the stretch there that second half with Elon having that 14 to nothing run before our Lord and Savior RJ Davis took over and was like, okay, it's my time, boys, here we go.
Mhm.
But I think, with some space between then and now, there were some things that I was really pleased with. For example, I wondered, we've seen this explosion from Seth Trimble in the preseason. Does that carry over? And the answer was yes. He didn't play a ton of minutes, but tied his career high in the first half of this game. Elliot Cadeau, for example, we've all wondered, is this 3-point shot for real? Because we've seen him
Mhm.
shoot it really well in the three preseason moments, the blue-white exhibition at Memphis and then against Johnson C. Smith. He goes 3 for 4 in the season opener. You combine that, Riley, with what he did in the preseason and in those four public opportunities, Elliot Cadeau has shot 7 of 10, 70% from three. So for
Pretty
what the
impressive.
backcourt is doing, I'm pretty encouraged, at least to start.
I like that angle a lot. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't record anything right afterwards because I was very frustrated watching the second half. I was got to had my media credential for the first game of the year there. Pre-wrote a story on Jalen Washington for HeatCheckCBB.com, was really hoping he could just give me like a double digit performance so that the story would fit. So there's still hope. Maybe he can go off for like 15 or so against Hunter Dickinson against Kansas
What?
tonight. That would make for a great story. So I wasn't able to run my story. I watched UNC struggle mightily against the zone. I was just like, dude, what is going on with this team? I mean, the zone was one thing where I don't know. Well, I'll start negative and go positive because
Sure.
I thought I don't it concerned me how hesitant some guys looked to shoot. I thought Drake Powell played the best in the middle of the zone, but even him, sometimes he was hesitant to shoot. He'd kick it out to Ian Jackson on the perimeter. Ian Jackson should never be hesitant to shoot. That's like what he does. He's a score first guard. And I don't know. I found myself sitting up in press row just wanting to yell like do him. play AAU ball, like do what you did in OTE and just go one on one, go ISO and get you a bucket, Ian. Like, and I'm sure that Hubert is working to instill confidence in him. It just kind of surprised me. Like, I was a huge Ian Jackson fan coming out of high school, and even seeing him at like the camp scrimmages from like June, and thought he played really well against Johnson C. Smith. And I think his length makes him much more disruptive defensively than I envisioned. But I maybe the zone is just his game is doesn't it looks a little weird against the zone, but really hoping that Hubert can maybe script some stuff to get him downhill, whether you play him out of dribble handoffs more against Kansas or use him more at the top of the key as opposed to playing out of the corners. But I thought some of his struggles were emblematic of most of the newcomers against that zone. I throw Cade Tyson in there as well. Even Jalen Washington, who's not a newcomer, like you think he could be a zone buster just by his ability to shoot that 15 footer if you put him in the middle of the zone. And granted, we haven't seen him pass like, Luke May type or even Armando, who grew a ton as a passer last year when it comes to just dismantling a zone. But yeah, it's still a little bit disheartening to see that.
It was. And going back to Ian, Riley, I think you're right because like let's remember back like the Memphis game. Like the big takeaway from for he and Drake in that game was they just both looked like freshmen and then like wildly different in that Johnson C. Smith game.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought they reverted to that Memphis version of themselves. Drake less so than Ian. I thought Drake had a better performance against Elon, but like Ian only had 11 minutes. He looked timid, like you said. It's like, dude, if they're going under screens, bust it. Same with
Mm-hmm.
Elliott. I thought some of that too. I'd like to see him shoot more threes.
Yeah.
And so I'm really curious, and I know we're going to talk about Kansas, but like, can you just settle in and go? I think you're spot on about the zone, dude. Like, how frustrating to come out and your first college game is against a zone. It's like, come on, Elon, what are we doing here? Man up and play man like dudes, right? And that's we won't see that much. Like I had people saying, "Oh man, that's the blueprint. Everybody's going to play zone against Carolina now." Teams that don't play zone aren't going to play zone.
Yeah.
Shut up. Let's get over that. It's
Bill
it's
Self
not
is
a
not
thing.
running a zone. I can
No,
tell you that
no.
much.
And so I think we're going to see a harder competition, harder place to play. We're going to
Mhm.
see a more true representation of Carolina against Kansas. Oh, but guess what? Even against that zone, and as frustrating as it was, the Tar Heels still scored 90 freaking points. And
Yes.
so it's like, like whatever.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point is that they still found a way to hit 90. Would have loved to cross the 100-point threshold just based on like the amount of bunnies that UNC missed in the second half. It's
9 for 21 on layups, 4 of 7 on dunks. That means they missed 15 layups and dunks combined.
the that yeah, okay, I'm gonna add that to our panic meter that we'll get to later because
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
spoil that and say I'm not super panicked about that. I think some of those were just unlucky bounces. Um, Defense was the other concerning takeaway, and uh so let's see. I would compare. So you remember the 2019-2020 season when
Unfortunately, yes, I do.
UNC struggled against UNC Wilmington. I believe they also struggled against Elon. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, I think so because that was that's the Cole Anthony season, right?
Yeah, they
Started so that was the birth of the ACC network. They played Notre Dame at home to kick off the season. Cole went
incredible
nuts,
game.
but then they had those two. I think they were true road games, right? At Wilmington
They
and
played
Elon.
at Wilmington, home for Gardner Webb, home for
Okay.
Elon.
Yep.
Looking at this, Isaac, I got some bad news about that Elon game.
Oh no.
UNC won by 14. The
Oh
same
no.
margin of
Oh no.
victory.
Was it 90 to 76?
No, it was 75 to 61. There is the point of optimism. Like this is at least my mentality as a fan who, also dabbles in the analysis department. I think it's a lot easier to improve on defense as the year goes on than offense. Like if you can't get a bucket, you just can't get a bucket. And I remember that's when I would draw the line to where I'm not going to go full panic mode like that 2019-2020 season that was just disastrous because I remember watching those games against Gardner Webb and Elon and just the scoring droughts like that 14-0 run that Elon went on against UNC where they couldn't find the basket, couldn't get a lid off the basket. It was like that, but prolonged for like 20 minutes in those games. So I'm
That's
not at that level. I think this team has too much firepower to
right.
revert to disastrous level season where they missed the tournament. But I'd like to see the defense just needs to get there on a communication standpoint. Like they
Big
gave up
word, communication, big word, Riley.
yes. What did you see out of Carolina in terms of just miscommunications, bad closeouts, etc.
Well,
On Monday
you
night?
know what's interesting is let's remember back to last year where defense wound up being Carolina's calling card. Like the offense was fine. I think this offense is going to be like night and day running circles around last year's offense. But even still, that defense didn't really find themselves. I think I heard Coach Davis even say this recently until that Oklahoma game in the Jumpman Classic last year.
Mm-hmm.
That was where, for the first time, it was like, oh, this team can defend out here. Now, I know a big part of that was Armando just finding a new level defensively, but
Mm-hmm.
this team has defense in a different way. Like, for example, there was Jay Billis put out his like Billustrator 1 through 68 today. Carolina was 10th. And in that capsule for the Tar Heels, he said, Carolina's going to be different this year, but different doesn't have to mean worse. I think Carolina's going to play more like faster and have
Mm-hmm.
more variety and stuff, but the results could very well be the same. And I really appreciated that insight from Jay Billis, Riley, to say Carolina was great defensively last year. And yes, we don't have a rim protector, the Tar Heels, in the
Mm-hmm.
typical mold. But think about how disruptive these guards could be if they figure out that communication that you're talking about there. Think about the individual defenders in a Seth Trimble, in a Drake Powell, in an Elliott. I mean, look how scrappy Elliott was on Monday night, dude. I mean, it's just all over the place. And so as they find cohesion with that, and then you think
Mm-hmm.
about the length of some of the short, undersized guys, but like, dude, Van Allen is long, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so there's possibility, but as you said, they've got to find this connectivity, and it's going to take a month or so to get there. So we just got to be, I think, patient with the defense.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And that kind of transitions nicely into the positives. I thought Cadeau was so good on both sides of the court, and I thought he had an unfair reputation as a bad defender last year. He was up, I would say more up and down than bad. He had moments of brilliance on that end. But I thought like RJ has always battled really hard on defense. He's just small, and that's where he,
Small. Yep.
gets taken advantage of or shot over a little bit. Cadeau to me, like looked pretty quick, looked more active with his hands. And on the other end of the court, I mean, 7 assists in the first half. I was hurt for him that he didn't get double
Oh,
digits
no,
because I
dude.
mean, Canelo,
Gosh. Yes.
Canelo can make a shot in the second half.
Yeah. That
Uh,
honestly, if dudes make shots, he gets to double digits in that game.
Yeah, I agree. Or well, one of those is on hit. Like he threw that lob
That
to
lob.
Jalen
Oh my
Washington
gosh.
that went right in the
And you saw, I
stand.
mean, you saw it on his face immediately. He was like,
Yeah, yeah. But I thought he was great. It was excellent to see Trimble, not just man, I turn on these highlights in the background. There was one really bad Cadeau turnover, pushing tempo, and just a terrible closeout from Withers on one of the Simpkins brothers that I'm like, that stuff will
those
get
dudes are
ironed
nice.
out.
Yeah.
It's frustrating to see as a fan now to be like, dude, come on. Like we can't be making those mental mistakes. But those are the type of things that I think get
Yeah.
weeded out pretty quick.
Yeah.
But anyway,
And then there's just dudes making shot like that corner three that Nick Dorn hit as he was fading away. It's like, of course, Torin Dorn's son is
yeah,
going to come to the Smith Center and go nuts, right? Like I could read
yeah.
that 2 weeks ago and know it was going to be a thing.
I think I did who did I preview this game with? Me and Brian, I think it was me and Brian Ralph, or no, Dion Hillford with Sleepers. We did a preview of that game, and both of us pinpointed Nick Dorn as like, this kid's from Charlotte. His one brother went to UNC, one brother went to NC State. He is angry he didn't get the look from UNC. He's going to be the one to pop off, and of
And of
course, it
course he
happened.
did. And those
But
Simpkins twins were
the
pretty good,
Simpkins
man.
twins are
I
pretty.
was impressed. Yeah.
Yeah, the Simpkins twins. It'll be interesting to see if they're playing at Elon next year.
Look, Elon was picked 12th in the CAA preseason. This is a better CAA team than 12th, man. I unless they just were nuts on Monday,
Yeah,
I don't see
yeah.
Elon finishing 12th in the CAA.
Yeah. Well, I hope they don't, so it makes us look a little bit better that we struggled with them. But yeah, to the positives, I was just gonna echo that Seth Trimble, seeing it translate in a real game that actually counts. Even though I don't really think like the exhibitions, I still think you can put some stock into them because most teams treat them essentially like a real game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was nice to see him really show a lot of like the ability to get into the paint, to know how to finish through contact, to knock down three threes. Can't complain about that at all. Yeah, let's
Hey,
talk
you know what
about the
else Elliott did, Riley?
yeah.
Elliott only committed one foul in this game. You know what else Elliott did? He tied RJ Davis for the most drawn fouls on the team with four. And that's a pleasant change from last year where Elliott was fairly or unfairly pretty foul prone.
That's a good point. I thought, yeah, I honestly thought he, not to be too homerish, but all of our listeners are UNC fans anyway. He could have shot a few more free throws based on how much contact he took. I thought Jalen Washington could have shot a couple free throws too. I'm just saying, like we need Hubert to work these refs a little bit more, especially in the Dean Dome. But
And
no,
that's the problem. There were 16 free throws taken, all of them by guards. No front court free throws. That is a little bit of a warning sign for me.
mm-hmm. Yep, I agree completely. But speaking of free throws, speaking of needing to work the refs, transitions nicely into the arena that UNC will be playing at tonight, Fog Allen Fieldhouse. Isaac, what are you looking for UNC to do this game? Are you more of the mindset of like Kansas is a lot better? I'm looking for a moral victory. Are you more so like I'm only going to be satisfied if UNC wins? Where are you at mentally with this game?
I'm somewhere in between those two things, Riley, because I legitimately think that Carolina can win this basketball game. Obviously, it's very unlikely that they will. I think FanDuel latest I looked at it was like 8.5, Kansas favored by. What I'm looking for Carolina to do is a couple things. Number one, this front court doesn't have to outperform Hunter Dickinson and Flory Badunga and Zach Clements, but they do have to not get outperformed by those guys. They have to at least hold their own. Maybe get beat by, like, maybe if Carolina's -2 in the front court, but the back court could be like +10, right? Like, that's a possible path to victory for this team. And probably season long, not just tonight at Fog Allen Fieldhouse. So that's something I'm looking for. Number two, I think the Tar Heels can't be intimidated by the fog. Beware, heed all ye who enter. Beware the fog, right? It says it on the banner. And like, so I'm watching like, how do Ian Jackson and Drake Powell handle that moment of playing in this place? Carolina has to find a way to not be intimidated by the sixth man, the character of the building. How do they stop a run? Because you can't just throw it into Mondo and let him go to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's probably got to be on the defensive end. And so I think the way you handle that is Elliott's going to have to control this game, maybe play 35, 36 minutes, like 10 to 12 assists, two turns, like a 6-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. And then I think finally for me, I'm looking for Carolina, since they will be playing against a man team, to run, 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 and then run a little bit more.
You know what? I think the run part is like the biggest strategy. You want to make Hunter move. You want to make him move as much as possible.
Yes.
You want to be like basically getting those hit ahead passes for easy buckets. You want to be putting Drake Powell, Seth Trimble, Ian Jackson in position to finish at the rim, like running in transition. You want to get Jalen Washington showing off a little nimbleness running the court as well. I love what you said about Elliott. I think just even looking at the plus minus where he was plus 28 in a
28.
14 win game, he might have to play 36 minutes against Kansas if UNC wants a chance. I'm with you. I think there's a world where UNC wins this game, and it might just be delusional fan talk because even like 2 months ago, I was like, yeah, Carolina's going to get blasted by 20, and it is what it is. But the more I've watched Kansas, I think they're still figuring out their identity a little
That's
bit.
right.
They started Diggy Coit these first two wins, who was playing at Northern Illinois, which was like a 5-win team the past 2 years. AJ Store hasn't figured it out yet. There's like, we'll see. Hopefully it's not his breakout like his coming out party tonight because I think AJ Store is still really talented. But there's a world where like if you just looking at the backcourt where I think UNC has the advantage. I mean, you can put Seth Trimble on Rylan Griffin. RJ Davis can guard Diggy Coit. Elliot Cadeau can guard DeJuan Harris. So like you
Yeah.
could flip flop those two. Like they match up really well there. And I think, Kansas is going to run that some of Self's motion concepts. They're going to run a ton of dribble handoffs. I think the switchability of those three on the perimeter bodes well to contain that. My key is Drake Powell. I think he needs to play
Mm.
25 minutes a game, at least 25 minutes. I'd love to see him get 30, but I'm a huge Drake Powell fan, and I think you just force feed him minutes until his offense comes along because his defense, especially, is a good decision maker. I love that stretch we had from him against Elon where he had the made three, the steal, and the
The
breakaway.
lob. Yeah.
Yep. And then the lob to Seth. Like, I think he raises his team ceiling. He would get you probably have to be maybe 25 minutes is more apt because you'll probably want Withers or Ty Claude even guarding KJ Adams in spurts because Adams is so physical. But I think Powell fits perfectly into this identity of using your link to create turnovers to get out in transition and putting athletes on the court. Um, I'm very worried about the front court. I think there's a good chance someone fouls out, whether it's Washington or Lubin or maybe even both. Like I trust, like you're playing in Fog Allen against a guy at Hunter Dickinson who can foul out like really good bigs, and Armando's not there anymore to get the best of them. Like that might be a struggle. But yeah, I think pushing tempo, getting your guards to be productive, and getting a good like if we can get 8 to 10 points out of Drake Powell, 5 to 6 boards, a couple steals, one block. That could swing the game. And while I'm on the topic of the freshmen, let me get some Ian Jackson bench production too. That would go a long way to getting a win.
Very much so. And just confidence, right? Like I and that I talked about not letting the fog get to you. My man Ian is going to bring that New York swagger, right? And I think like he won't be bothered by the moment, but it's like what I love from Drake is that you can already tell he has a slow heart rate and he's just going to operate the way he does and not let moments be too big for him. And so I'm with you, Riley. I think that could be huge. For folks that remember Kansas last year, you might or might not be aware, El Marco Jackson is out for the year. Unfortunate. We never want to see guys hurt, but that's a plus for the Tar Heels because that dude is I thought he was gonna have a big sophomore breakout this
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
But yeah, I think you're onto something, Riley, with Kansas. Yes, they have back DeJuan Harris and KJ Adams and Hunter Dickinson, but they're bringing in all these new pieces, right? You got freshmen in Raquise Passmore and Flory Badunga. You got all of these transfers you talked about, AJ Storr and Diggy Coit, and good grief, who am I?
Rylan Griffin, that's the big one.
Yeah, Zeke Mayo, Shaquille
Oh
Moore,
yeah, we
all
didn't mention
like,
Zeke Mayo.
dude, I
Yeah, that'd be
mean,
deep.
good grief, that dude's a bucket. So you got all this. And so this is the time to catch Kansas while they're still trying to figure it out, not in January in the middle of Big 12 play. That's where it's
Mhm.
like, I think Kansas is going to be really rolling then. So if you can catch him now, give Rylan Griffin some comeuppance because Carolina not only owes Kansas revenge because the Jayhawks, Riley, have won the last four matchups in this series. '08 Final Four, 2012 Elite Eight with Kendall Marshall sitting on the bench. Thank you, Creighton. 2013 in the second round, and then 2022 in the national championship. That's the last four matchups. And so we need some revenge for that. And we need some revenge on Rylan Griffin for the Sweet 16 last year.
Yep.
Got to try to make it happen. But I think what that leads me to say, Riley, like zoom out big picture, this is so good for college basketball, for our sport, right? To have two of the top three winningest programs of all time squaring off on campus on the first week of college basketball, one of four AP ranked on ranked matchups this week. It's awesome. And the fact that they'll be in Chapel Hill next year. This is only the second time these two programs have ever played on campus. The other was 1960 in Fog Allen Fieldhouse. And obviously, next year, the Jayhawks will come to the first time ever to Chapel Hill. This is just historically good for our sport.
I agree completely. I love it. I think the atmosphere should be electric. Let's go win this game, man.
Let's
Just
do
don't,
it. I
at
love
the
it.
very least, don't get blown out. I
Yeah.
don't make me turn the game off with 10 minutes left in the game. You know what I'm saying? But I won't do that regardless. But don't crush my hope with like before the under eight timeout in the
I
second half.
yeah.
But
I don't need my post game reaction to be a just straight up therapy session for everyone tuning in, right? Like, yeah.
well, let's close today's show by doing a little panic meter. I don't want to, well, I'll throw some positivity on at the end, but I am genuinely curious just to break this down a little bit. I have a couple topics I want to hit on, playing off of some of our concerns against Elon and see, do you think this bodes negatively for the Tar Heels or if it's something that they can figure out? The first, I got to say, Cade Tyson's shot and his general discomfort on the court. And
What
I'll give you a scale here.
I was gonna say,
This,
what's our scale?
yeah. This is something we've done with sleepers. We do a color scale of green as in not panicked at all, yellow, get in there a little bit, orange, like teetering on the brink, and red, essentially a red alert. So what on the color scale, where would you have Cade Tyson's shot not falling, plus just the general discomfort he's kind of looked so far?
Yeah, I'm going yellow, Riley, and here's why. I don't care the level, like meaning at Belmont. This dude for his career has shot over 40% his freshman year, over 40% his sophomore year on a good volume. That doesn't just go away when you step up a level of competition, especially given his positional size and capability and repeatability of his shot. Moreover, this is a dude that also each year of college so far has taken more 2-point attempts than 3-point attempts. And so I think it's an issue right now of him just not being settled in, kind of similar to Jalen Withers last year, because he's so used to at Belmont where he's the dude. He's the one that's getting plays drawn up for him. He's used to
Mhm.
having the ball all the time. So how do you learn to operate now that you come here and you're just one of a bunch of dudes, kind of like Harrison Ingram had to adjust to last year? So for me, it's not a matter of if, but when as Cade gets settled in. But for the time being, I'll yellow it because he does need a little time clearly to get settled in.
I like the optimism. I'm probably closer to an orange. I probably would have
Okay.
said red in the heat of emotions on Monday night. But I think you make a great point that it's got to be tough going from being the guy to essentially being the fifth option coming off the bench. And where I would what I say also keeps me at an orange right now, as opposed to a red, is we haven't seen UNC run a ton of action, like even some of those like blob sets that Carolina would run of him coming off of or like what getting Cormac a look off a stagger screen or something. I
Yeah.
haven't seen UNC do a ton of that for Cade, and I think if you do and just let him see it go through the net, I mean, he had a really good look out of the zone. I think came from a drive and kick from Elliott and just missed it. Where I feel like in a few weeks from now that's going to be cash. Like it's just so hard to completely disregard that sample size we had of. I mean, he made 83s last year at a 47% clip
Yeah.
in a good league in the
Yeah.
valley, the Mo Valley, and he's tall, he's 6'8", like he should be able to get the shot off to where I think they start to fall a little bit. Let's move on and say, oh gosh, I forgot what prompt I was going to go with next. Hold on.
While you look, I had figured out, Riley. I had somebody in my comments saying literally, no, it was a Twitter DM. Somebody was like, "We wasted a scholarship on Cade Tyson. He's Paxson Wojcik all over again." All due respect to Paxson.
Pax is my
No,
guy. Love Pax.
I love Paxson. Cade Tyson is a better basketball player. He's a better shot maker. I got no time. Like orange that whatever, but
But
to just straight up
don't go full code red.
no.
Okay. Second, I remember my second prompt
Okay,
was
bring it.
Jalen Washington foul trouble
Season long or in the Kansas game?
season long.
Season long, I'd go orange. Kansas game, I'm going red.
That's
Like,
funny. I feel like Kansas game I'm red. Season long I'm only like a green to fringe yellow.
okay, good. Well, that brings hope. Here's why. I think like as you said earlier, Armando is Hunter Dickinson's daddy. Like it felt like Carolina was matched up with Michigan multiple times recently, either ACC Big Ten before that died, and then Jumpman, right? And if I remember correctly, we won those games in back-to-back years. The Tar Heels did, and Dickinson didn't do much. Jalen Washington ain't Armando Bacot. And so I think Hunter's probably going to have his way with him. Honestly, I think Van Allen will have more success against Hunter Dickinson than Jay Wash, unless Jay Wash can just get him out, as you were talking about, and run him
Mhm.
around a little bit. I'd love to
Yeah.
see some of that. But I'm concerned about that tonight. Less so season long, but just got to see it. And I guess some of it is minutes played, right? Like if he's only playing 20 to 25, then my meter goes up to yellow season long. But
Mhm.
if he's getting 25 consistently, I would probably put it at orange.
Uh, Yeah, I'll make my case for green to
Do it. Bring it.
yellow. I just think part of it's probably a lack of experience, lack of minutes, and he'll learn to better avoid those fouls. What I would say I'm probably a little more panicked on is just the lack of strength. And that just might be Washington's body type and a ceiling thing is like he's been in the program 3 years. He's not, I think he looks bigger. His shoulders look broader,
Agree.
but, and I think his defensive instincts are fine to maybe even good. It's just a matter of like, can he hold his own against physicality? And that's where my panic's probably closer to a yellow orange. But I think there's ways to scheme around it or even like take advantage of his length as a shot blocker. To where
Would
I'm
you have
still,
him would you have him front guys instead of playing behind them and bring backside help?
I actually think that'd probably be a pretty good strategy. Where are you on that? At on that?
I don't know. It's something I've thought about this summer. Actually, Coach
If
Robinson, who comes on my show sometimes, was
mhm.
the first one that mentioned it, and I was like, you know, like I just want to see the Tar Heels try some things defensively, and I guess that maybe goes back to our earlier conversation about what does Carolina have to do, and it's like I would be I would love to see them try that. I don't think we've seen the full playbook yet, and
Yeah,
so I don't know.
yeah. I will say Seth Trimble is like one of those guys who's looked. I mean, there was a possession late in the first half against Elon where I want to say it might have been Withers like trapping a ball screen or at least hard hedging, and Seth was the one coming over to tag the roller and got it came up with a block. Like I think, I mean, Seth Trimble has had that weeks. Like if you go back to his Menominee Fall days, he had weak side rim protector in his bag. You saw it against Michigan State in the round of 32. I mean, I think there's a world where he and Drake both can provide a little bit of coverage like that if you want to use if you want to get creative, I guess, with how you deploy Jalen Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. I expect. Well, let's do. I'll transition this. UNC's pick and roll defense. Where are you at on on the panic meter with that?
Man, I was hoping you were going UNC pick and roll offense because I'm very excited about that. Pick and roll defense, though. Oh, who's the? I think it depends on personnel for me, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like just with Jay Wash's injury history, I'm worried about his lateral mobility. I think Elon took advantage a little bit of some drop coverage Monday night
I
um,
agree. The drop
in
coverage
pick
was
and
the
roll
most
moments,
concerning part for me.
right? And so because of that, I'm going to go orange.
I yeah, I think orange is fair. I would say even Lubin and RJ guarding ball screens. That just might be a tough combo with like Lubin's lack of height, even if he's got the long wingspan. I like yeah, I expected Washington to be a little more successful in
Me
drop
too.
coverage just with his length. And I mean he does have the size that Lubin doesn't, but I could probably be talked down to a yellow, just that Washington can get more comfortable in it, like the more and more the season goes on. Um, so yeah, but I do think the way for this Carolina team to be most successful defensively is probably to apply a little bit more pressure, and I think maybe trap some more ball screens and see if you can get steals
Amen.
that way. Because yeah, and lean on having Drake and Seth and Withers in some cases, like they're on the back end to jump passing lane or not to jump passing lanes, tag the roller when you're trapping ball screens and everything.
Yeah.
Um, last
11
one,
steals. 11 steals Monday night,
I
Riley.
love
There's only
that. I
three
love that.
times in the Hubert Davis era the Tar Heels have had more.
Wow, oh, that's a great stat. I guess
Thank you.
that's why people subscribe to the exclusive Isaac Schade Discord for those stats and scoops like that. Last one we'll do, and then we'll wrap it up. Ian Jackson, Ian Jackson in general.
Green, I'm not worried.
That's because I wanted to end positively. I'm also agreeing. I think Ian Jackson's too talented, too much of a bucket. He's gonna get comfortable. I wouldn't
There will be
worry at all.
stretches. That's if people want to go yellow, it's because there will be some Caleb Loveness to his game. But you live through those and you're going to have more green.
Hmm. Hmm. I agree completely, and I think Hubert's too good of a coach to just
Yes.
throw Ian Jackson in the corner the whole season. Like he's gonna find ways to maximize his strengths, and I really think this game against Elon was such a weird contest that ultimately is an outlier for Ian, even if he
100%.
has some other
Wash it
hot and
away.
cold nights. But anyway, like I said, wanted to end positive. This team is going to continue to grow. Like you said, Isaac, it's not always going to look the same as what we've been used to. It's a really different front court from what we're used to, but I think they can make up for it in a lot of ways with their perimeter weapons. And we'll be excited to tune into the Kansas game tonight to see how UNC responds with its trip to Fog Allen. Hopefully, the next time you see me, we'll be celebrating a Tar Heel victory. But enjoy the game tonight on behalf of Isaac and on behalf of my